Hey guys, it's Caleb Goldner with ComicsAlliance.com. Today we have a retro action figure review and unboxing with some super or just normal Street Fighter II G.I. Joe action figures that I found at a convention about a year ago for less than 10 bucks. We have Guile and Blanka. Both of them have amazing rocket launcher, grappling hook, cannons, which they totally need as Street Fighters who can project energy and kill people with their bare hands. We'll go ahead and look at the packaging real quick. This is Guile's awesome treasure troll haircut. If you remember the Stone Protectors action figures that were kind of like the buff Ninja Turtle treasure trolls, he looks pretty much like one of those, minus of course the gem, the treasure, the stone, and he comes with a bunch of weapons, like incidental weapons that he doesn't need, guns, some different missiles for his giant rocket launcher thing, and some decals. He's got a file card, like all G.I. Joes. I don't think Larry Hama probably wrote these, but who knows? And sweet proof of purchase points, which I'm sure I can redeem on something. And Game Pro ad, that's neat. And here's the whole cast, the whole line. Pretty much everybody from Street Fighter II, with the exception of a few characters. And the vehicles, which were, I think, all just recycled G.I. Joe vehicles with added neon parts. And here's a picture of the Dragon Fortress, which I think was recycled for some, well, it might have been new. I think they brought it back for the Shadow Lu headquarters in the next line. Let's look at Blanka real quick while I think about that. Or you can just Google it. Here's Blanka. He looks like a treasure troll too, with molded plastic hair, of course. He is very turquoise on the box. Kind of a awesome mismatch right here. They did have actually a blue Blanka that came with one of the vehicles, and his alternate kind of like reverse colorways like you'd have if you fought two Blankas in the video game. There were a few of those. I think there was another Guile and some of the other characters that came with the vehicles. They had that reverse colorways going on. Here's Blanka's file card. You know about Blanka. And let's get opening. Oh, 9 accessories. It says so on the box. Sweet. Let's see. For being so old, these are, and I guess these are 20 years old. These came out in 1993, which is like a year or two after the Street Fighter arcade game and the console ports on the NES and Genesis and all that jazz. This shows you how to use Blanka's rocket launcher. Thank you. So yeah, these came out in 93. They're actually old enough to drink now. If they could, I'm sure they would. Look at this guy. He could use one. After this line, as I'm popping these accessories out of there, Ninja Turtles, like, what do you call this stuff? Runners. There's actually a Street Fighter the movie line, which came out in 1994. Yeah, the movie came out. It was mostly recycled versions of these figures. I think there was a new Guile that looked a lot more like Jean-Claude Van Damme than this guy over here. And it had some other characters in it too. Oh, Sweetie has a knife. That's totally what these guys needed. And they are all neon purple, just like they should be. But yeah, the second wave that came out in 94 is pretty much the same thing. I think most of the sculpts are pretty much identical, but if you're a video game purist or just a video game fan, these hilarious figures are pretty much worth looking at. I don't know if they're worth buying. You might check out eBay, or like me, if you find them at a comic convention for dirt cheap. Let's see. They are totally fun and silly toys. And what's funny is I think a lot of my friends picked these up. I knew, you know, when you're a kid, all of your friends have stuff that you don't have, that their parents bought them at some holiday. And so like the 93, 94 G.I. Joe lines are all crazy. There was Ninja Storm Force and like Star Brigade and all the weird like eco stuff. He has slightly different directions than Blanka. Actually, they might be the same. Let's take a look. Nope, different. Now you really know how to do this. And he has 10 accessories. That's value. His accessories are actually different than Guile's or Blanka's, which is interesting. He has different guns, which are black. There's still that soft kind of plastic though. Twist these open. You'll notice these are made well enough that you don't need wire cutters or an X-Acto knife to pop these out without a bunch of flash from the runner on the pieces. They just pop out really easily. And I don't know if that's just because these are 21 years old or if the engineering was just that good. I'm gonna guess it's a combination of both. Yeah, he's got a knife just like Blanka. Okay, so for the purposes of this review, I'm not going to tie a knot to achieve grappling hook status on these dudes. We're going to keep this wonderfully lethal, but I bet they still fire really nicely. Let's see. Yep. Springs are still good in these. It's a good sign. So the pieces, weapons. Do we need to see what Guile looks like holding a gun that is bigger than him? I mean, like, this is Liefeldian scale right here, which is appropriate for the time. This gun is so huge and his hands are so brittle. I'm not even gonna force it. See if I can get this knife in here. Yep. So these guys don't hold their guns incredibly well, and I don't want to snap off their thumbs. If you had any G.I. Joes from this era or before, or up until the line went to G.I. Joe Extreme in the mid-90s, which was, I hope I find some of those sometime. I can review those because they're incredible. Many a thumb snapped off of these older Joes just because the plastic's kind of brittle, and you know, the rubber bands, I'm not going to force it, but they snapped all the time too, which is why we love them, because they are so cheap. And Blanka with this gun is pretty incredible. It's pretty bananas. It's funny to me because I think like these toys came at a time when effect parts, like Japanese toys have been doing effect parts for blasts and energy manipulation and stuff like that forever. And then, even like in the Spider-Man line and the X-Men lines in the 90s, they started to do more like translucent or clear effect parts to demonstrate energy projection powers. A good example would be like Iceman's little ice sled in that like early 90s X-Men thing. But he came with some blasts and chunks of stuff. But these characters, the G.I. Joes had nothing like that. They were just all about guns and knives and swords and stuff. So it's funny that these came with these guns, but if you were a kid and you had no idea what Street Fighter was at the time, like you were younger than kids who played Street Fighter, I don't know how that would happen. Or you just, when you were a kid, you didn't get video games all the time. Maybe you missed it that year for your birthday or Christmas. Then this dude's a soldier. Guile, for all intents and purposes, is a G.I. Joe. He looks just like a G.I. Joe. He's a buff dude in a tank top and camo pants. Guns are a fine accessory. For Blanka, though, he's so slight of build for Blanka. And it's actually worth noting that the E-Honda Street Fighter G.I. Joe had a big torso. He had the big sumo build. If I find him, that would be pretty dope. So it's kind of funny that they didn't do something more advanced for Blanka, especially because they were doing what were those evil like monster vipers? Were they called monster vipers? That were part of Cobra. They were just pretty much normal action figures, and they didn't do them for very long. But they were like big monster guys. It would have been cool at the time to see them do something like that for Blanka, but for the sake of keeping everything in the same scale and having him work in the play sets and all that jazz, I guess, they went with a more conventional size and build on this guy. It's also sad to see him wearing full pants instead of righteous shorts and having huge wavy back hair. But it's also fun to have this really ugly, weird figure from an era where collectors were totally not a priority at all in the toy market. And so we have all these awesome curiosities. So, if I have to score these for a proper review, I would give them an A+ for being weird and retro and nostalgic for me and a lot of other people who played the Street Fighter games, and especially people who like G.I. Joe. Let me just give you, this is not a vintage Joe. This is, I think, the Rise of the Cobra, or Rise of Cobra from the last movie line. If you hold them up to these guys, they're still in the same scale. These are more advanced, of course, have better articulation, and they don't have the rubber bands that break. But as a kid, you could put these up against any of your other G.I. Joes, or even now, any other Joes from the era. They don't really look like they stand out. They actually, during the, probably 92 to 94, the G.I. Joe line was just nothing but neon and monsters and zombies. They had like that Toxo zombie figure. So these are pretty much just like totally normal, average G.I. Joes for the time. And so I can kind of see how they fit into the line perfectly, even though as Street Fighter toys, they're kind of wonky and weird. But I'm going to give them an A+. If you can find these at a convention or on eBay or something for cheap, or at a garage sale, if people still have those. Did Craigslist kill the garage sale? I haven't seen one in a while. They're really funny, they're fun, and they will work with all of your other Joes if you still have some from when you were a kid. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with something a little more contemporary. See you next time.